Rainbow Six Siege has had a wide range of operators release over the many years of the game being out, many of which shape the meta they are released in, and oftentimes they become extremely influential. However, as I discussed in my previous video essay, some operators aren't so successful, and the operator I am discussing today suffered from being horribly misunderstood by the majority of the lower ranked player base, and he's never really gotten his true chance to shine in ranked. So follow me as I tell the story of Rainbow Six Siege's most misunderstood operator. For the sake of today's story, we must go all the way back to Siege's release on December 1st, 2015. And with the game's release, we saw 20 operators implemented, many of which were extremely strong and influential, like Thermite and Jaeger. However, some of them were not considered to be so strong by the community. One of those being Castle. Castle was released with 3 of his bulletproof barricades, his UMP-45 SMG as his main primary option, and 2 handguns as his secondaries. When Siege first came out, the game was completely different. Strategies were not nearly as complex, and many players just didn't really understand how to use his barricades effectively. A lot of the time, you'd see players just barricading doors into the bomb site, and this would end up being a detriment to the team in most circumstances. Since this was the main way Castle was being used at the time, many players in ranked just kind of wrote him off as a bad pick. So over the following years of content, Ubisoft would give more and more quality of life changes to Castle to motivate players to start using him. The first of which would come in Operation Black Ice. Operation Black Ice released on February 2nd, 2016, and with it came the new map Yacht and the 2 new operators Buck and Frost. Buck was a competitor to Sledge, and a good one at that, and Frost was a very unique trap operator that could get her team free kills if used properly. And Yacht was popular on its release, but it would quickly become apparent that the map was competitively flawed, so many people would eventually write it off. However, what we're here for today is obviously the change to Castle, and what Ubisoft did in this update was make his barricades bulletproof while he was placing them down. This was a decent quality of life change, and it helped to match up the animation with the barricade's actual hitbox. But obviously this wasn't a change that would alter the community's perspective on Castle. He was still perceived as pretty weak, and players even at the highest levels still hadn't learned how to use him to his full potential. However, Ubisoft had other priorities for their balancing, like Tachanka, so Castle wouldn't see any significant changes until Year 3, Season 3, also known as Operation Grim Sky. Operation Grim Sky released on September 4th, 2018. The new operators in the season being Maverick and Clash, both of which would see little play in ranked initially, especially at the lower ends of the spectrum. However, luckily for Maverick, he would see large amounts of play in professional circles, and he would have a sizable effect on the meta at that level. Ironically, for similar reasons as Castle, because Maverick was very complex, and so many people at the lower levels just didn't really understand him. And since he was such a time inefficient operator, most people just decided not to use him. Then for Clash, she would become one of the most hated operators ever added. She was another shield operator, which many players were tired of, and that could be frustrating to play against without a coordinated team. As for the map for this season, it was just a rework for Hereford base. The map was forced into ranked initially, and players would have to deal with its addition for over a year before it was finally removed. However, as you guys probably know, in this season Ubisoft would decide to buff Castle again by removing one of his biggest counters, Glass. They did this by making Castle's barricades no longer penetrable by Glass's DMR. Surprisingly, this was something that was used against Castle a whole lot. A Glass would often go on a window that Castle had barricaded and use his DMR to hold angles through those barricades. It offered a really tight angle that was hard to notice if a defender wasn't standing near the barricade when he shot through it. This update removed that functionality and helped Castle to a decent degree. However, his pick rates in ranked were still quite low, and players in the professional scene were just starting to figure out and incorporate him into some strategies. However, he still wasn't understood by the general populace whatsoever. So Ubisoft would continue the buffs his way by giving him another one in Operation Void Edge. Operation Void Edge would be released on March 10th, 2020. This season brought 2 operators, Iana the Attacker and Oryx the Defender, and it brought the rework to Oregon as the new map. Iana pretty quickly became a popular choice amongst rank stars, and Oryx was not nearly as influential on launch because he was looked at as a casual operator since his gadget wasn't so strong from a competitive standpoint. Then for the balancing changes, they did end up removing one of Goyo's canisters in this patch. They made Jaeger a 2-speed, they nerfed Legion's mines heavily, they nerfed Twitch's drones, and they nerfed Buck's frag grenades. But for Castle, they made a huge change to his loadout by giving him access to the Super Shorty as a secondary option. This may seem like a small change, but this was genuinely huge for him because it allowed him to help his team set up the bomb site at an unprecedented rate, which when combined with his barricades made him provide a lot of utility to his team. This change also caused him to be noticed by a larger portion of the rank side of the community. From personal personal experience, this was definitely around the time where I began using Castle a lot more in my strategies, because a shotgun just offered so many more opportunities. However, Castle's biggest change had yet to come. That change wouldn't be releasing until Operation Crystal Guard. Operation Crystal Guard would be released on September 7th, 2021, and it released with one operator, Osa, 3 small map reworks, and a lot of balancing changes. The operator Osa brought her deployable glass shields onto the attacking side. These shields were extremely useful for controlling power positions and taking map control, but their utility would take a while to realize and ranked due to their high skill gap required. Once again, very similar to our story with Castle. However, this wouldn't last long, and nowadays she has become a formidable and rather viable operator in rank. Then for the balancing changes this season brought, they would be quite influential as well. This season saw the removal of the operator armor system and replaced it with additional HP, and we also saw 4 major operator reworks. The first was Twitch getting access to a second regular drone that was equipped during the prep phase, and her drones getting the ability to jump. The second was IQ getting the ability to use the Ping 2.0 system inside of her gadget. The third was Mute Jammer's area of effect being changed to spherical instead of cylindrical, and the fourth was Fuse's cluster charges being given the ability to go through reinforcements. However, they would also make an influential change to Castle, as mentioned. That was them giving him access to 1 additional barricade, but as a downside, making all of his barricades easier to melee, making them take 9 hits to destroy instead of 12 like before. This was actually a strong buff because it allowed Castle to cover more ground, and it meant that the attackers had to use 4 bits of explosive utility to deny every single barricade. This change really drew more attention to him in the higher ranks and in comp. However, even after all of this, Castle was still a very misunderstood operator in Platinum and below. Many of the strategies that players used around him were years old strats from Pro League that had been passed down, or they were strats as simple as barricading every outside window. Now he's definitely starting to get the recognition he deserved, but he was still an operator exiled to the higher ranks, mainly because of his long setup process and his complexity. So Ubisoft would give Castle an additional change to hopefully fix one of those issues in the next season, Operation High Caliber. High Caliber released on November 30th, 2021, and with it we saw the introduction of Thorn, the map rework for Outback, and a small amount of balancing changes. This season really hasn't aged well with time, and the reason for that was because Thorn was arguably the most lackluster operator Ubisoft had released up until that point because of her terrible gadget and average loadout, and then the Outback rework did nothing to fix the map's problems before adding it back into ranked. This made the content side of the update really bad, and it's what caused it to age so poorly. However, if there was one thing positive to take away from this update, it was the change to Castle. This update added the ability for Castle to place his barricades on an already barricaded window or doorway, instantly destroying the wooden one behind it. This may seem like a small change, but when you consider that before this, Castle had to walk up to 4 barricades, tear them down, and wait for the animation, then place his bulletproof barricades down, this took a lot of time. And when you consider that Castle was already expected to make rotates and head holes with a shotgun, it quickly becomes apparent how bad of an issue this became. This change really helped to crack down on Castle's setup time, and after the change, Castle was positioned in a really good spot to function as a strong support operator and as a backbone for some of Siege's most powerful strategies. We have seen Castle get one other small change to help him out, that being him getting access to an ACOG on his UMP, which also caused more people to start playing him, but none of it really compared to the changes to his gadget and overall kit that I've discussed throughout this video. I really do think Castle is in a great position nowadays. Many people still don't see his true potential, but he has definitely seen way more recognition even in the lower ranks after all these changes. And content creators continuing to push cool strategies with him on social media has also helped him out a ton. I doubt we'll ever see a day where Castle truly dominates in the charts due to his support role position, but he is definitely a utility powerhouse worth considering in your roster if you spend the time to learn him. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed today's story of Rainbow Six Siege's most misunderstood operator. If you did, I make Siege content just like this twice a week, so go subscribe to the channel and follow me on Twitter if you don't miss the next upload. If you want to watch another video just like this one, a video will be popping up on your screen right now that I'm sure you'll enjoy. I'll see you next time, friends, and peace.